I would say growth. I mean, we used to think that the Chinese were great long-term economic planners. We now know that's not the case. With the economy slowing, they've been talking about reforming to a much more consumption-based model. But you look at what they've done in the last year or so, they've lowered their value of their currency. That helps exporters. They've increased credit. That suppresses consumption. So every indication is that growth matters more than reform.
Okay, and this is pretty interesting because the new five-year plan is going to have to try and deliver growth along with stability, I know you're arguing, because, I mean, along the way in this whole anti-corruption and anti-conspicuous consumption campaign, I mean, Xi Jinping has made, well, a lot of people who may not necessarily be his friends anymore. So it's not just growth, but it's also stability. Otherwise, he could be in a bit of trouble.
That's correct. A lot of people think the current president is the most powerful president since Deng Xiaoping, and that's probably true. But this anti-corruption campaign, if President Xi does not deliver, he personally is in trouble, and possibly the leadership group is in trouble. Now, if you look at what he's been talking about, he talks the language of reform. But ultimately, if he doesn't stimulate growth in such a way that maintains economic and social stability, he could be in deep troubles. That's his dilemma.
And so far, from what you've seen through the stock market drop this summer, this continuing slowdown in the broader economy, I mean, the one thing that's been consistent or constant has been, look, every time there's a problem, throw credit at it. And what you're arguing is, look, credit is credit, that is not reform.
Well, yes, that's right. We need to distinguish between change, which can be reform or can be tactical, and genuine reform. And I honestly don't see a lot of signs of reform. Almost every move that the CCP has made in the last year when it comes to economic policy making and policy responses is essentially to loosen credit. Remember, we were constantly told this is China's problem, and it's correct, this is China's problem, but they have no other way of stimulating growth. Politically, they can't take a short-term growth hit or a medium-term growth hit to reorientate the economy. There are a lot of problems now for the leadership in Beijing.
Interesting. And in terms of geopolitics, John, we were talking about this earlier on in the show. There's a U.S. Navy, a guided missile destroyer, probably as we speak, within China's 12 nautical mile limit. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Subi. That's one of the reefs, and there's another one in the Spratlys archipelago. And if you're, folks, if you're wondering what those red dots are, those are the reefs and shoals, artificial or otherwise, that are being contested by a number of countries in Southeast Asia and also by China, of course. And that's the problem, because China claims basically the entire area. John, the fact that we've got a U.S. naval ship challenging this 12 nautical mile limit right now, as we speak, this should be pretty tense, could potentially be pretty tense.
It could potentially be pretty tense, and this is the awkwardness of China's rise. On the one hand, economically, we embrace China's rise. It's been great for the whole region and for America. On the other hand, as China has got more powerful economically, it wants more and more geostrategically, and hence you're talking about reclaiming land features in the South China Sea, where you correctly say they claim almost the whole of the South China Sea. Now, the smaller countries in Southeast Asia have been begging the US to show some resolve to stand up to China as China reclaims these land features in the South China Sea. This is the US belated version of trying to show its security allies and partners that it can stand up to China. And of course, I think it's just to tell the Chinese that Americans are still number one when it comes to strategic and military power.
I'm just curious, what do you think the Chinese reaction or response is going to be to that guided missile destroyer, and also potentially one or two surveillance, U.S. Surveillance aircraft together with that ship?
The reaction will be predictably harsh, but we also have to remember that the US had signaled they were going to do this for quite a long time, and you can bet there's a lot of diplomacy behind the scenes between the two countries, essentially explaining why the US is doing this. The Chinese will be explaining to the US that they will deliver a harsh response. There's still a lot of shadow boxing at the moment. I don't expect any sort of real flare-up to get out of hand.